Don't tell me that the moon is shining. Show me the glint of light on broken glass. Hello and welcome to Shining Moon, a Speculative Fiction Podcast, episode 13. I'm your host, Deborah L. Davitt. Today we'll continue our series by asking questions about speculative poetry before doing a little poetry reading and then holding a poetry thunderdome. My guests today are Brian Hugenbruch and Don Vogel. Let's start with some introductions. Brian Hugenbruch is a speculative fiction author and poet living in upstate New York with his wife and their daughter. He enjoys fishing, but only in video games, Scotch, but only in real life, and he spends his days explaining quantum cryptography to other nerds. His fiction has appeared in Analog Escape Pod and ZNB Presents. His poetry has appeared in Dreams and Nightmares, Apparition Literary, and Abyss and Apex. No, he's not sure how to say his last name either. Hello, Brian. Thank you for coming back to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you back on.
Well, thank you very much, Deborah. I'm glad to be back.
Dawn Vogel has written for children, teens, and adults spanning genres, places, and time periods. She is a member of SFWA and Codex Writers. She lives in Seattle with her awesome husband and fellow author, Jeremy Zimmerman, and their cats. Visit her at historythatneverwas.com or on Bluesky or Mastodon at historyneverwas. Thank you for joining us, Dawn. Nice to have you on.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
I'm really hoping it will be. The Thunderdome almost always comes up with some surprisingly good results. People always think, oh, I can't write anything good in 2 minutes. And then they pop out with these profound things. And I'm like, where were you hiding that? All right, let's start with, we already covered this on the first podcast, but what is speculative poetry to you? How does it differ from literary poetry and your approach to it and your definition of it? And I'll start with Brian.
Oh, man. And wasn't expecting to go first on that one. But I would say that speculative poetry is more, I've always felt that it's more marketing than it is an actual term. I think poetry is poetry. And that
Yes.
Certainly it has its own language that comes with it, as any genre content would. But I think it still latches on to emotional core truths the way that quote-unquote literary or normal poetry would. So
Okay.
I think people don't need to be scared of it. It's just, and it's, I wouldn't call it, a sonnet with spaceships, but it's perhaps a little bit more profound than that. But, it helps to explore some interesting ideas that maybe mere mortal today's language wouldn't necessarily be able to cover.
Okay, I like that. Dawn, how about you? How do you approach it?
So for me, I think that my speculative poems are the ones that have something in them that might not qualify as real. And that could be something, sci-fi, could be something fantasy, could be a monster, could be a cat that talks, who knows what. But honestly, there's not that much difference to me either between what speculative poetry and literary poetry are. I think that I've read some literary poems that definitely felt speculative to me and vice versa. So I don't have much of a different approach between the way that I tackle each one. I like writing speculative poetry better because I think it's more fun, but I don't really change the way I look at poetry depending on whether I'm doing speculative or literary.
All right, that's fair enough. Why do you write poetry, Dawn?
I stumbled into it on accident, honestly.
And so say we all.
And then I figured out that it was actually a fun way to tell a story in a small space, which I love doing. I love flash fiction and drabbles and all that. So I could tell a story in a small space and I could leave out some of the conventions of stories. For example, I don't have to use dialogue in a poem if I don't want to. I can, but I don't have to. And so there are some stories I think that just for me come out better as poetry than they would if I tried to write them narratively. And so, if I get an idea, I can look at it, and poetry gives me another option in my toolbox of writing of, instead of doing a short story or a flash or a drabble, I can say, or a poem.
All right. I like that answer because I stumbled into poetry very much by accident myself. So I feel you there. Brian, why do you write poetry?
Same basic idea, slightly different approach. A long time ago, I was a mopey teenager. long time ago. But and that's where my poetry started. And as a result of that, it took a long time before I got into narrative poetry, despite reading, Beowulf and spending a lot of time with the Romantics and the Victorians in high school and college. I followed Poe's philosophy of composition and figured poetry was there to evoke an emotional response. And I was there to drive daggers home and pull teeth and do all kinds of nasty things with my iambic pentameter. And over time, as I've gotten better at both fiction and poetry, those things have merged slightly. I've learned how to use both sides of that toolbox a little bit more proficiently, so that I don't have to rely merely on vibes when crafting poetry. But I'm definitely not shy about using them or just letting the vibes marinate on their own without having to inflict a story upon it.
I like that. I tend to approach things more like Dawn said, as a story that might not merit a full novella or a novel or something like that, but it's an idea that I wanted to get out and things like that. So it's been harder for me to do more of the lyric poetry, and because to me, well, of course, everything's a story. Everything's a story. And so getting it into my head that it can not be a story, it can be a vignette, it can be a single expression of a single emotion, and it's still a thing, is like, but where's the rest of it? Is at least where I'm at. So it's something I'm still working on as a poet. Where are some favorite places of yours that you found speculative poetry in the wild? Brian, some favorite venues.
So, running alongside of college, I think Strange Horizons debuted on the web not very long after. So I kind of graduated from the quote unquote classics into something completely different. And so, moving from that into places like Penumbra or Apparition Literary or, some of the other spec fic venues. I also keep tabs on the quote unquote literary side by, looking at Rattle or, Poetry Magazine even, just to see how the other half lives.
Yeah. Oh, if only to be able to appear in those pages one day. I keep trying, but they keep not biting. Dawn, some favorite places of yours?
I really enjoy Starline. I've had a few poems published there, and I love the zine feel of the publication, and they send it to you when you're in it, and then I can flip through and read all these other people's poems. I also like Ida the Telescope, especially with their themes. And then on the slightly more literary side, like Brian said, Apparition Literary, and also Orca, a literary magazine, does sort of they do a speculative literary issue, I think once a year, and then they also
I'll have to check this out.
Yeah, they also have literary issues. I think they do 3 issues a year maybe, and like 2 are literary and 1 is literary speculative, and so they have a nice mix in those literary speculative issues that I like. And then of course the big ones, the Strange Horizons and the Uncanny and Asimov's and Analog and all those.
Yeah, I tend to, at the end of the year, when people send out their poetry packets saying, these are all the things that they wrote during the course of the year, then it's like, I get to gulp down everybody's distilled, it's like reading an anthology of you.
Mm-hmm.
I get to read all your stuff at the end of the year. And so it's all in one place. And then I can just go through and go, yeah, you guys are awesome. You guys rock. Do you have any collections or chapbooks that you might want people to read? Either of you, because I know that you're both a little on the newer side to poetry, but I know you are shopping some, Brian, but I don't know that you have any out that people can read.
I don't have any out yet. So while I have, a few that I want people to read, they can't yet. So keep your fingers crossed, and certainly
yes.
I'll post something to my own website and announce it all over the web as soon as something sells on that score.
Yeah. I am definitely keeping my fingers crossed for you, because most of your collections sound like they are awesome and like things that I would want to read. So, and Dawn, how about you?
I don't have any traditionally published chapbooks, but I did put together a collection that I self-published called What If I'm a Merfolk? And it is mostly poetry with a few flash fiction and maybe one short story, all about merfolk. There's a art challenge every May called Mermay, where artists do 2D drawings of merfolk of various sorts with various prompts. I take those prompts and I use them to write. And so one year I did mostly poetry for Mermay, and then I picked out my favorite ones from that year, put those together with a couple of other little pieces that I had, and that's where What If I'm a Merfolk came from. And then I toss poetry into my other collections as well, but that's the only one that is primarily poetry so far.
Where can people find that one?
On my website, historythatneverwas.com. It's sold on basically all of the major retailers, but you can get to that and my other publications just straight from the front page of my website.
Okay, fantastic. All right, let's go ahead and shift gears a little bit, and you can show us what you can do when you have all the time in the world to write a poem that you are proud of and that you think that people will enjoy. And I'm going to do this in alphabetical order and pick on Brian first. Please tell us the name of your poem, where people can read it, and go ahead and read it for us.
Okay, so this poem appeared in the late lamented Liminality magazine.
Oh, I missed that one.
Yeah. And it is actually my very first published poem, and it's called Tomorrow's Moments. I met an admin from an antique LAN who said, 2 webcams point into a room gone mad. We don't know where it is, nor who configured it. The floor is littered, cans, chips, cigarettes devoid of breath. Upon the wall a banner hangs, Spring Break 09. The feed is live, and yes, the frame rate's fine. The bodies on the floor we linger on. Their limbs are gone. Their pallid flesh decays on video. Their lifeless eyes regard the comments coolly. But for all the far-flung chatter, dead and motionless they stay. 100 million strangers watch and pray and cannot help and cannot look away.
Ooh.
Wow.
That one's dark.
I like it.
Yeah. All right, Dawn, what is your one that you want to have today?
So the poem I have is The Whale Shark's Stars, which was published in Strange Horizons in, I think, August or September, not too long ago, so you can still read it on their website. And this one is an interlocking rubaiyat. So it's the first time I attempted that form, and I liked how it turned out, and Strange Horizons bought it, so I was like, win-win. Vast ripples flow across the cosmic lights, and in their wake the newest stars shine bright. The scientists unsure whence they were formed when spotted by the distant satellites. In laboratories filled with well-informed astronomers, the science minds brainstorm, content at first to watch it from afar, astonished when the source is a life form. A whale shark larger than a full hectare, its spotted skin resembling the stars. a swimming, leaving new ones in its wake, a Pleiades-like map of Zanzibar. They marvel at the beauty that it makes, though logic makes them do a double take. This should not be. It makes no sense, this light. The stately stars they see are no mistake.
Very nice. Love the imagery.
Thank you.
Brian, where did you get your inspiration for your poem? And why did you decide to write it in the form that you did?
So, I mean, the obvious point of inspiration is Ozymandias by Percy Shelley, and which would later go on to inspire me to play a lot with golden shovels in other poems. So having the reference there was just kind of a fun nod, and that's where it started. But this idea of exploring horror through poetry, which may be my very first formative experience with poetry, is reading Porphyria's Lover by Robert Browning, and watching the enjambment on that just really drive the stick right into your eye with your expectations skewered at the end of it. So having the idea of horror and social media obsession combined into a sonnet format, and that love of horror and that love of obsessing just really seemed to gel very quickly for me, and it turned out not too badly.
Yeah, I liked it. I really did. I thought that particularly the ending just landed really, really hard. So kudos on that, because getting things to land in such a way that it rocks the audience like that is much more difficult than it sounds.
Thank you.
Dawn, where did you get the inspiration for yours, and why did you decide on the interlocking rubaiyat?
So most of the inspiration for mine was learning about whale sharks, which they have a star-like pattern on their skin, and the idea of a whale in space is sort of a little bit of a Doctor Who reference, but also, just doing sort of my own thing with it. I think I decided to do this as an interlocking rubaiyat because I hadn't tried that form before and I wanted to. Okay. And when I started playing around with it, I had words that I could find easy rhymes for, but also interesting rhymes for. And rhyming is one of the skills in poetry that I have a little bit of trouble with, because I feel like a lot of the time my rhymes come across as very like grade school sounding. But so finding a way to use larger words and in interesting ways and some slant rhymes was really fun. So I liked playing with the format. I'll probably do it again. But this one just sort of turned out and everything worked. And I was like, okay.
As you were reading it, it was beautifully read, and the rhyme did not come across as forced at all. Everything flowed beautifully. So I can see why Strange Horizons snapped this one up. It was gorgeous.
Thanks.
All right. So now we're going to shift gears into the main event, which is Poetry Thunderdome. We're going to do 5 rounds. The first 4 rounds are going to be given 2 minutes each, which will be snipped out for broadcast purposes. 2 minutes each to write the best poem you can in a very short amount of time. Then on the last one, we're going to luxuriate in the 5 minutes of time we're going to have. And you're going to think that you have so much extra time, and you might actually get to the end and go, hey, Deborah, we're done. The idea is already down. In which case I'll say, okay, point taken, and we'll stop the timer and move on. All right. So the way we play this is I'm going to ask you first, do you want to do noun, verb, adjective, or person, place, thing first?
I like person, place, thing.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. Dawn, pick a number between 1 and 30.
12.
12 is a gambler. Brian, pick a number between 1 and 30.
23.
23 is Lake Baikal. Do you know where Lake Baikal is?
I do not.
Mm.
It is one of the world's largest freshwater lakes. It is in Russia, And when it freezes over in winter, it is spectacularly beautiful.
All right.
All right. And a thing. I'm going to close my eyes and say 17. A rubber ducky. So we have a gambler, Lake Baikal, and a rubber ducky. Do you guys want me to play along with you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have no idea what I'm going to come up with for this. This is going to be crazy. All right, one more time. A gambler, Lake Baikal, and a rubber ducky. Begin. All right, that's 2 minutes. Everybody happy with their first efforts? I'm not.
I got about half done.
I don't know what just happened.
Have you done this before, Brian?
No.
Okay. This is actually my second time doing Thunderdome, so I know you got to write fast.
Brian, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, I better. That way. Let's get it out of the way. Okay. Ice latches onto childhood, gripping ducks and dinosaurs of hugs of stasis, unbending, unyielding, and random nasty chance cannot say whether yellow duck or sweet canary childhood will ever swim again.
Oh, that's lovely! How'd you do that in 2 minutes?
I believe desperation.
Dawn, you want to go next?
Sure. And like I said, I've got about half of this done, but I know where I'm going with it. But what I have
That's a good thing.
What I have so far is they say the thaw won't come for weeks. They prove it by putting things on the ice. Sticks, cardboard boxes, children's toys. A rubber ducky, joined soon after by dozens more. But one man thinks he can beat them all. A car, he suggests. Engines out, seats out. And that's all the further I got.
Oh, I can see where that's going. I like that.
Yeah. If you're familiar with Neil Gaiman's American Gods, that's the inspiration
I was wondering
there.
if that was in there somewhere.
Yep.
Okay, well, you can definitely play with that one and finish that one out. All right, so mine is not nearly as good as Brian's, and while it's complete, I'm not sure it's good. So, a rubber ducky, some of the flotsam of human existence, the trash, the detritus of the early 21st century, floated in the otherwise pristine waters of Lake Baikal. It couldn't have been guessed that a gambler would have found it. The odds were long against its presence in his net, and he wondered from where it had come and to what child it had once belonged, back in the days when plastics were common and the world was a dirtier place than it was now.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm going to call that one Solar Punk and call it done.
Yeah. I mean, that one is a great example, too, of one that could be a story. Like the introduction, the first few lines made me really think story.
Yeah, I had no idea where it was going. I just kept writing. So Thunderdome is great for getting into that flow state just out of pure desperation, as Brian was saying. Mm-hmm. So we're going to switch to noun, verb, adjective for this next one. I'm going to ask Dawn to start us off with picking a number between 1 and 30.
Oh, let's see. Let's go with 25.
25 is a dealer. Brian, 1 to 30.
4.
Correspond. And I'm going to close my eyes and say 30. And that is going to be the word onerous. This is going to be hard.
Yeah.
So again, I'm going to give you a moment to think. Dealer, correspond, and onerous. 2 minutes, beginning now. And pencils down. How are we feeling about that one?
Less confident.
I finished this time.
Then we're going to start with you, Dawn.
All right. It's hard to play cards by mail, the onerous correspondence, never remembering who dealt this crap, waiting months for your turn. But for the war vets, it's a window of social interaction in the otherwise bleak nothingness of space.
I love that one. That is perfect. All right. Brian, you want to startle and shock us with how good this one is?
I'd love to, but instead, here's my poem. They put the first two down in front of me. Don't count the cards, I tell myself repeatedly. Don't count the cards, but patterns waft around me, spider webs, fractal light, and magic math. Don't count the cards. There's nothing more onerous than drawing parallels, and nothing more frightening than the end of every equation.
Oh,
nice.
You landed that one hard. Good job.
The don't count the cards refrain was excellent. I like that a lot.
Thank you.
All right. Mine, I finished early, but I don't know if it's any good. It was an onerous correspondence kept up long distance between the stars, light years between himself and his wife. Daily complaints dwindled. The words I love you diminished, until time, the dealer of all dismay, reduced them both to silence and decay.
Dark, but nice.
Didn't know if that was good.
Well, it was definitely not as good as yours was.
I have doubts.
All right, we're going to switch back to noun, verb, adjective. I'm sorry, person, place, and thing. And I'm going to ask Brian to start us off with a number between 1 and 30.
7.
7 is a carpenter. Dawn?
11.
11 is Las Vegas.
This is what we need a dealer for.
Yes, we did. I'm going to go with 29. And that's going to be a goblet. So a carpenter, Las Vegas, and a goblet. I have no idea what we're going to do with this one. Right, starting now. All right. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and start this time.
Sure.
I don't know what this one wants to be. I think it wants to be longer, but I don't know where it's going. The tarot deck showed all cups, goblets full of coins, in a poker game in Vegas, attended by a carpenter who claimed he was Christ. The tarot deck showed all cups, and the plastic cups were filled with quarters, as the tourist ventured out blinded by an unearthly light. I think it wants to be longer. I think it needs more of a point to it, but I don't know.
It's got a Vegas feel, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in Reno, so I know how to do that much at least. All right, Brian, why don't you go ahead and go for it now?
Okay. Liquid neon fills the cup of a carpenter. A storm's eye, soon gone.
Ooh. Haiku'd it.
Nice.
Dawn?
All right. They feast on platters of gold, drink from goblets of silver, recline in chairs covered in velvet. It's business as usual at Caesar's palace, and I'm just the carpenter, reduced to shoving shims under slot machines and roulette tables. It pays the bill, making sure the house always wins.
I like the ending. Yeah. All right. This is going to be our fourth round, which is our last round of 2 minutes. We're going to go back to noun, verb, adjective. Dawn, lead us off with 1 to 30.
Let's do one.
Abattoir.
Ooh.
And Brian.
19.
Anticipate. And I'm going to close my eyes and say 5. Third. Abattoir, third, and anticipate. I can go with abattoir and anticipate, but third is throwing me for a loop. Beginning now. All right. Oh, that one sucked. That one sucked.
I want to do something with an abattoir that isn't what I just wrote.
Likewise, I am not happy with this one. But do you want to lead us off, Dawn?
Sure. The drop gets you every time. Is it at the end of a hangman's noose? Is it the feeling of falling when you're drifting to sleep, but this time you really fall? Or is it the abattoir, an oubliette of death and decay, you just waiting your turn?
I like it. I see you didn't manage to get third in, but I that was really hard.
My goal was to make it the third option, so the third option was where the abattoir was.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't use the actual words except for abattoir this time.
Okay. I like what you did then. And I liked the imagery, and I thought that it was effective, and you did some craft stuff that I didn't spot, which is really cool. All right, Brian.
I don't regret the second time I died. A fall from feral heights, aloft until a sudden end. The wind, it rushed around me, filling life with sound and meaningless excitement. I walked away. But the third, I was cremated, and much as I would like, there is no coming back from that.
Oof.
Needs a little bit more room, but
it needs more room, but it's a good beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one's got some legs that can be explored.
Mm.
I don't like mine. On the third day, the abattoir was empty of animals. I couldn't anticipate what would come next, that they would come for us, the humans, and direct us under the flensing knives that leaped and danced in silver and red. And the blood, the rich blood, fell to a floor slippery when wet. On the evening of the third day, the abattoir was again empty, this time of all lives.
There's some really good stuff there, so it's just a matter of massaging it and taking more time with it, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And so our next round is going to be the 5-minute round, which of course will be edited out, and will just sound so brilliant when we come back from our little 10-second break, and people will go, "Wow, that's so much better than the last couple of rounds." At least I really hope that that's what happens. All right, it's going to be person, place, and thing. Brian, lead us off.
Let's see. What haven't we picked yet? Let's go with...
Oh, you've been keeping track. Good.
Let's go with
I'll tell you if it's something that you've already picked.
the number 6.
The number 6 is a minor.
Is that with an E or no?
That's an E.
Okay.
All right, Dawn.
I feel like maybe 8.
8? You're making this too easy. It's going to be Mars.
Nice.
And I'm going to close my eyes and say 13. That made it hard again. A snail.
Okay.
A minor on Mars and a snail. And let me adjust my clock here so that it's more than 2 minutes. And begin. All right, that's time. How do we feel about the longer time period this time?
I wrote more words, but it just let me dream bigger, and I didn't finish.
No! Brian, how about you?
She took my answer.
All right, I'll lead off because I actually finished early, and
Nice.
I probably should have had more time to play with it. But all right, like a snail, we carry our homes with us on Mars, never leaving our rovers far behind. I stake a claim in the Cydonia region, digging not for gold but for rare earths like lithium, which fuels all our electronics. But gold is what I find, soft and ductile, yet ultimately not worth much. Not here, not on Mars, where survival rests upon a knife's point. I mark the claim, file it with the Martian colonial government as mine, but ultimately abandon it. There's just no time for luxury items and riches, not when tomorrow's survival is at stake. And, like a snail, I crawl on my rover to the next likely spot, the next field of dreams, and start the core sampler looking for something that's actually worth digging for. It's not very poetic, but it's a story.
Yeah.
Brian, can you do better?
Sources say no, but let's take a look. Red world's light drifts slowly, a snail across the barren rock. Badlands long past salvation. The war, or the myth of it, makes the land more angry. The rover scuttles over broken stone, selecting samples, subroutines set to prey if anger, ever present, is revisited upon it. But samples it must find, because its Martian masters asked it nicely, and while this broken husk, this wasted earth, was scary to a rover's subroutines, its masters said that nothing lived to hurt it in this place, only fear, which oft provided ample samples for its subroutines. A rock falls in an unknown distance, wind or time or something else, a morbid, monstrous earthman. And that's where I ran out of time.
Oh my God. I have to ask, are you writing this by hand or are you typing?
I'm writing all this by hand, which if I were typing, I'd be in a whole lot more trouble because it would have gone further.
Dawn, I know you're writing yours by hand because I was watching.
Yes.
And do you feel that that's helping you or hurting you at the moment?
I feel like at least here I'm getting my ideas, even if I end up crossing them out, they're here. And so I think that when I take these things to revise, which I plan on doing, I think I'm going to end up like being able to sort of follow my thought process a little bit better because it's on paper. Whereas if I were typing it, I'd just be like deleting lines and then they're gone forever.
Yep. All right, well, lay it on us. What did you come up with that lets you dream big?
Well, so I didn't quite get to the end of where I wanted to. I got to an end, but not quite fully where I wanted. And I realized as I was working on it that when I do sci-fi poems about actually extant planets, I need to do a lot of research while I'm writing and didn't have the ability to do that. So if I screwed up something about Mars's geology, I'll have to fix it in post. The drill leaves a spiraling trail down into the red rocks, turning in on itself like a fractal. The miner stops at the limit of the drill, but nothing has come from the hole. No water, no precious metals, not even a change in the stratigraphy, red all the way down. She moves the drill to the next coordinates, auguring another hole. By morning, colonists surround the holes, peering inside like they're divining something in the clay. And that's where I got to.
I love where this was. This is the beginning of something great. I want to read the rest of it now.
Well, quick, let's give her another 12 minutes.
It's going to take a little longer than that. I'm going to have to read at least 3 Wikipedia articles before I can finish.
I know that feeling very well. I felt like I was cheating because I almost always pick Cydonia as the region where I start things in Mars. So I'm like, that's easy to remember, and I can just go from there. But all right. Do either of you have anything that recently came out or that it will be coming out soon? It can be prose as well as poetry that you'd like to talk about that people should totally read.
I can go ahead and go. So yeah, my most recent poem out was The Whale Shark Stars. I do have 2 poems accepted by Asimov's. I don't have publication dates for those yet, but they will be here at some point. I've seen the proofs on the first one, so I suspect it's going to be in the November-December issue, but I don't know that for certain.
Congrats!
Aside from that, I have a self-published collection of my short stories and 1 poem that are alternate history, or what I like to call fantastical history, where I inject supernatural or speculative elements into actual history, and then I write an essay about the actual history that I'm warping. And this is going to be the 3rd volume of those. It's called Unfixed Timelines 3. And it comes out October 17th. I am also putting out the same day an omnibus edition of the first 3 volumes that will collect them all into a print book, because the previous volumes have been really, really slim and they haven't made enough for a print book, but this one's going to be a big, chonky, like 250-page book now.
Wow. Nice. Brian, anything out recently or coming up soon?
Yeah, well, not quite as much, but I have 2 poems coming out this month. One will be in Space and Time, which will be artificial intelligence related, but certainly not artificial intelligence crafted. One will be in Penumbra Speculative also this month. And I have a longer form short story, prose, appearing in the Water Dragon Publishing Dragon Gems anthology for fall 2024.
Congratulations!
Very nice.
Thank you.
It's nice to hear that somebody got into that one.
Yeah.
I did not submit, but I've been watching people go rejected.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if anybody had gotten in, so I'm glad to see that someone has, and that is you. All right. Thank you both for having agreed to be on the podcast. It was a delight getting to speak with both of you and to getting to play a Thunderdome with you. It's wonderful to watch how people's minds work. So thank you very much. Next week on Shining Moon, we'll finally get to talk to editors Eleanor R. Wood and Shingai Nijeri Kagunda of Podcastle. We will be talking about, obviously, editors and editing. We will see you then. Thank you all, and we're out.